Well, the interview heard round the world is over. Tucker Carlson has sat down with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and for over 2 hours, they conducted a much anticipated interview that probably didn't go the way that anybody envisioned it to go. Let's first of all give credit where credit is due. This interview would not have occurred if it weren't for Tucker Carlson, for his brand, for his persistence, and frankly speaking, for his professionalism. His reputation got him into the Kremlin, got him where he was positioned to sit down and talk with the Russian president. We should also give credit to the Russian president for being willing to sit down and engage in this dialogue. Was it everything it could have been? No. I mean, Tucker Carlson is an interviewer. He's not a Russian expert. He's not a Russian historian. He's not somebody who's versed in the complexities of Russian life. Vladimir Putin is a Russian president. He is a man who knows Russian history. He knows the Russian soul. And if you listen to this interview, you would know that this was very much a tour de force where the Russian president was introducing an American audience to the nuances of Russian history and to the complexities of the Russian soul. And if you don't understand Russian history and you don't understand the Russian soul, then you're basically on a journey without a map. And I think that's the value of this interview, because Tucker Carlson doesn't have a map. Tucker Carlson, though, had the courage to set forth on the journey. And in a conversation with the Russian president that was maybe less a dialogue and more of a monologue, the Russian president helped create a map that guided not only Tucker Carlson, but every American viewer through the complexities of what makes Russia tick. And you have to understand this if you're to understand the issues that confront Russia and the West today. Let's be clear. Russian President Vladimir Putin didn't provide any groundbreaking information. Almost everything he said has already been said before in one way or another. But what he did do is provide this information in a context that was approachable by an American audience. And this is the value of this interview. This really isn't about the content, although there is some interesting information that came out. This is about the process. Tucker Carlson opened a door into modern day Russia, opened a door into the personality of Vladimir Putin, opened a door into the history of Russia, opened a door into the Russian soul. And because of the answers provided by Vladimir Putin to the questions, or sometimes just the statements made by Vladimir Putin unprompted, the building blocks necessary for an individual, an American citizen, willing to take the time and effort to learn about Russia, to learn about, how Russia got into the situation it is, how Russia interacts with the West, what Russia is thinking about. The building blocks are there. And somebody who wants to will be able to construct a solid foundation upon which we begin to move forward. And this is what makes this interview so valuable. Not because in and of itself it solves anything. It solved nothing. But because it is the beginning of a process. The genius of Tucker Carlson isn't so much in his interviewing skill. It's what he's going to do after the interview. He has now created a process where he can go back and talk about the interview to an American audience. This is his genius, his ability to interface with Americans. And he now has the ammunition, the words of the Russian president spoken to him in a setting that was historic, in an environment that was, just invigorating. We don't know how many millions of people have watched this interview or how many millions of people who will eventually watch this interview. What we do know is that this is one of the most important interviews of the modern era, because this interview has the ability to stop the West and Russia from going to war, to stop the West from committing suicide. All of the answers to all of the problems that face Russia and the West today were laid out by the Russian president. There's no hidden agenda. There's no, secret code that has to be known. You just have to know Russia. You have to understand what makes Russia tick. You have to understand the thinking behind the Russian president's decisions, the motives behind Russia. You have to understand Russia. I don't think Tucker Carlson understood Russia going into this interview, and I don't know if he understands Russia coming out of this interview. But I do know this. Tucker Carlson's one hell of a journalist, and Tucker Carlson knows that he was given a toolbox, complete with tools, and now he has to go out and finish the job. Today was just a start. There's a lot of work to be done, but even the most difficult journeys begin with the first step. And what Tucker Carlson did today in sitting down and presenting this interview with the Russian President Vladimir Putin to the American people, to the West, to the world, is that most important first step on a journey that can save humanity.